Hi, it's Chaya Kong. Today's video is for the lawyers of you who moved to Israel or who have moved to Israel for a while and haven't gotten around to converting your license for whatever reason. I'm going to go through the process of doing it and also the options that you might not have considered as to alternatives that you can explore if you don't want to stay in the same profession for certain reasons. So the first is for you to convert your degree to be recognized by the Israeli Ministry of Education, to give them your transcripts, your certificates, like your graduation certificate for your degrees. It may be a JD, maybe an LLB. In some jurisdictions, you also have a bar sort of like study certificate. So you give them all the certificates and transcripts, your ID. So you fill up an application, and after a little while, they can approve it. And you will have a letter of recognition where they say that the Israeli Ministry of Education recognizes your degree. So with that, is step 2, you go to the Hebrew University where you give them like pretty much the same documents, and basically the degree will be recognized by the Hebrew U as a valid like legal degree. It's located in the Hearts of Fame campus of the Hebrew U. You can contact them by email, but honestly the best way to get anything done is to go there by yourself, bring all the documents you need, and meaning like all the transcripts, all the certificates, and the degree recognition letter that you've just got from the Ministry of Education. And then after you get them to approve your legal degree recognition, you will have to bring all of this to the third bureaucratic process, which is in the Israeli bar. Now, the Israeli bar, there's a branch in Jerusalem, like pretty much a headquarters near the Talbia, like Jerusalem theater area. And you bring all those documents as well as an application form where you fill in your details, and you bring it to EOD, to the person in charge of this whole process. Now, she is pretty good with replying to her phone calls, but not so much emails. Emails are like slower. So the best thing to do is give her a call first, try to see if she's in the office on a certain day that you want to come. But even if you fail to get her on her call, you should just go there and give it a shot, if you can afford to do that, if you can afford the time to do it. If you can't, just like call her until she actually answers. She's dealing with a lot of applications. It's just like that. It's just bureaucracy, and you have to get through to a stage where you can give her the documents when she's there with the application form, and then you wait a couple of days. So it could take like a week depending on her availability, and you will get in return some of your documents, but you don't get everything back. Like, she keeps your transcripts in like a file that they sort of like maintain. Honestly, there's no I don't think there's a real justification for them keeping your original transcripts, but just know that they're going to take it and you're not going to have it back unless you borrow them for like a purpose, like having a job interview, and you want to just have them and you have to give it back. So yeah, it's worth having more copies of your transcripts if you could. So after you do all these, is decide how many exams you take. Now, the whole process of examinations of a license conversion are divided into 2 parts, which sandwich an internship. The first part is Dinei Israel. The second part is Mevchanei Lishka. Dinei Israel, the laws of Israel, are doable in Hebrew in terms of the questions, but you can answer in your language, for example, in English, in Russian, in French. And if you decide to answer in Hebrew, you actually get to not take the Hebrew proficiency test. So meaning there are 8 exams in the Dinei Israel of substantive law, and then there is 1 more exam which is just Hebrew. If you want to save yourself the headache of taking this Hebrew test, which is kind of like drafting like simple legal documents, just answer the 8 in Hebrew and you won't have to take that. My personal advice is, if your Hebrew is already at a level of conversational fluency at least, what you can do is you take this legal Hebrew writing course, Ktiva Mishpatit. You apply through the Ministry of Absorption and Aliyah. Also, there's this organization called Nevo, under which there's a person called Danny who works with them. So apply through the ministry in collaboration with this person, and they'll put in this course where you pull up your Hebrew level from just conversational and simple writing to like legal Hebrew writing. And honestly, you'll be able to just get the legal Hebrew test and just go straight to answering all the questions in Hebrew, if that makes sense to you. So the whole process of an examination is you have to like register for certain courses for the Dinei Israel. If you need the assistance. If you don't, if you actually want to study by yourself, it's totally fine. I know somebody who did all of the exams in one go, meaning all of the exams in the same season. without taking any of the courses. She just studied by herself all the legislations, and she passed all of them like the first go. I have to say though that if you find that you work better with a structure, if there's somebody guiding you, it's worth registering for the courses. They're subsidized by the Ministry of Absorption and Aliyah. So most people either spread the 8 exams out and do like 2 per season. One season is a half year. So the first half of the year, the second half of the year, and the first half of the year, and the second half of the next year. So they do it in like 4 parts. There are some other people who do 4 and 4, meaning like 4 in June and then 4 in December, January. June, July, December, January. And then you'll get all done. It might be 5 because, you know, if you do the Hebrew test. So that's pretty much how it goes. There are rarely people who do all 8 like at the same time or all 9 at the same time. These people usually have excellent Hebrew, or they just, you know, also have the time to do it, meaning they put their minds to it like for, you know, that 6 months and just like aim at passing it in one go. So if your Hebrew is solid and you're good with reading Hebrew, because reading Hebrew legislation, I think, is honestly the biggest challenge of this whole exercise, you can totally just dedicate yourself to it. But if your Hebrew is not that solid and your Hebrew reading is slow, I would recommend you to spread it out, take different courses, you know, go about with your job at the same time, and just not give yourself too much pressure of having to pass all 8 at the same time while you're like not salaried or something. So there's the next slide. The next step is your internship. Now, fun fact is your salary as an intern, as an Ole or Ola, is actually subsidized heavily, like around 75% by the government, meaning the Ministry of Absorption and Aliyah will pay or reimburse, I don't know, your employer for your internship salary, meaning that you're going to be more popular with the employers who know about that. So it's actually very attractive to the employers. It's just that you pass all the exams. Honestly, I think that's the harder part. But if you come from a jurisdiction which is like not very close to the Israeli law, or you're not in like a very highly demanded sector inside law, then you might consider this like a huge advantage. It was not so attractive to me because even without an Israeli license, I can easily find work as a corporate or commercial lawyer. Like if you come from like some jurisdiction doing like criminal law in like Russia, then, you know, obviously it's less convertible and it's not as, you know, in high demand. The turnover rate is also, you know, lower. So there's that. The third part would be the Mifane Lishka, where you have to pass the entire like Israeli bar exam together with Israelis. Now, only the people who have not practiced 5 years in your foreign jurisdiction post-qualification have to do this. And if you have done only like 2 years, it really depends on the jurisdiction, whether they give you an exemption, in which case you have to speak to Yehudit. Yehudit is the person who really, really knows the subject and all the intricacies. And generally speaking, your pre-qualification experience would not be considered to bundle it together with the post-qualification experience as far as the 5-year requirement is concerned. But there are exceptions, and I recommend that in such case where, for example, you have like 2 years before your internship and before your qualification and 3 years post-qualification, you speak with Yehudit and see if, you know, you get any special exemption. So generally speaking, people who have not got 5 years of experience post-qualification take the entire process, whereas those who have only who have sufficient, you know, years of experience only take the Dinei Israel and do, I believe, they also do the internship. I think so. So this is the whole process. Now, the hardest part, honestly, is the Mivchanei Lishka, which now we come to a topic that is more controversial. I know some lawyers like who make Aliyah, they really, really want to stay in their profession, and I think in half of the cases it's because they're good at the profession and they want to stay, but the other half of the cases is like they might be good at the profession, but they do not love it, but it's sunk cost, meaning they have already invested so many years of their life into doing law and they just want to stick along with it. They don't want to so-called waste their time of the years before they moved, you know, to Israel. We all know that sunk cost is not exactly the smartest way of making a decision, even though it is a consideration in certain cases. The pass rate for it is really low. It's about like 10 to 15% for immigrants, for like Olim, as far as I am aware. So, meaning even if you pass the Dinesa and you do the entire internship really well, if you do not pass the Mifane Lishka, like your effort before would not help you, you know, be like more competitive in terms of like having an Israeli license or not. You know what I'm saying? Like you get all the skills, of course, that you've learned by doing the Dinesa and your internship. You get better Hebrew, you get better legal skills, you get more, you know, networking, but it doesn't give you the Israeli license if you don't pass that one. Now, the person that I knew was a genius. She did all the Dinesa by herself without the courses. She just like read all the legislation. She's pretty good with Hebrew reading, I guess. She did not pass the bar, and she was devastated because she invested so much time and energy into the whole thing, and she sort of failed the last part by, a few points. So whether this whole exercise is worth it is totally up to you. My advice is, unless you're like very cut out for the legal profession, and or you already have 5 years of post-qualification experience as a lawyer in a foreign jurisdiction, you might want to consider doing something else that you actually like more, right? So for instance, there are people who pivoted to tech, actually even after they get an Israeli license. There are people who take like a tech bootcamp. There are people who do a second degree in something else, like an MBA, for instance. The Ministry of Aliyah and Absorption support a career pivot, meaning even though all of the processes I've just mentioned are partially subsidized or even heavily subsidized by the ministry, whereby you get subsidies for the courses that you take, you get subsidized books for the legal exams. You can sign on a waiver where you waive all your benefits of legal professional support by the Ministry of Aliyah and Absorption, and instead you use your benefits for your new pursuit. For instance, like for a boot camp that you want to pay for, about a few thousand shekels, depending on which program you're taking. Now, in order to pivot, you will have to go through a bit of soul searching, like a target setting, as well as to research into the programs in Israel which are supported by the Ministry of Absorption and Aliyah, so that you can make full use of it. There are boot camps, for instance, that pretty much, largely commit to helping you find a job. Not every boot camp does that, and even the boot camps that seem to promise to do it might not be a good choice. So you have to really research into which program that they subsidize is actually the best program for you, especially under this market. So that's pretty much like the process, of before and after the internship, and also your options if you don't want to go through that. Personally, I worked a few years in one of the leading Israeli law firms in the high-tech corporate and commercial department. And my experience is that if you do not have an Israeli license, you are always not fully integrated into the core team, because the most important projects are always going to be managed by somebody with an Israeli license, unless you are a partner from Morrison Foerster, or Mayer Brown, who, made Aliyah with your clients. So I personally recommend trying it out while you're working, meaning if you're working at a certain firm as a consultant or as a paralegal, you can take maybe the legal writing course first, Ktiva Mishpatit, and you can start 1 semester of the B'nai Israel courses and just see how you feel about it. You can also start to collect books from people who have taken it before, or just go to NEFO's website and try to read the legislation and see how your reading skills are. After you do this first step, all the recognition, bureaucracy, and this, trying to take the courses part, you will probably have a good grasp of whether you want to put all the energy and effort and time into relearning most of the laws that you've already learned before in order to qualify for an Israeli bar. Meaning it's like a test of whether you really, really, really want to stay or not. Because I think you really have to be patient if, you have to learn a lot of stuff again, and most of which you're not going to use because they're not relevant to your particular sector. And it's also in Hebrew, which, sort of is a deal breaker for a lot of people. So that's all my advice, and I really hope that everybody who is pivoting or transitioning or converting your license in Israel as a lawyer or ex-lawyer will be, very, very mutzlachim. And I'm going to have a link in the description to this video that sets out some useful resources and links that you can have a look at while you're in the process of making this career step of converting your license. So all the best.